episodes now. I watched through episode 9 this past week, and I'm glad I did. It not only will make me a better guide for you to get through these episodes, but I didn't like the ending. But when I rewatched episode 6 to do my notes for this breakdown, I kind of started to come around because I kind of like emotionally got over my dislike of the ending, and I started to look at it from an analytical perspective, and I think the show continues to be brilliant. So I'm not only happy that I can be a better guide for you, but I would also tell you that if you have a bad reaction to the end of the season, you might want to go back to this point, episode 6, and watch again, because I think it's actually worth the time. But don't worry, no spoilers here, no spoilers. I'm going to point out some things you're going to want to remember, but that's it. All right, so now that I've seen all 9 episodes of The Last of Us, I can tell you that there are 2 kinds of episodes on this show, which is a little jarring. It's a little bit of a weird choice, but there are some episodes, 3 in fact, that are vignettes, contained to a single episode, more or less, that are beautiful, tragic snapshots of love in the apocalypse. And so far, those have been the standout episodes. I'm talking Bill and Frank, the married couple, Henry and Sam, brothers. Oh, we're going to talk about that. Because, we're talking about 2 more brothers this week. And then also next week, Ellie and Riley, Young Love. Those are beautiful. And they're all stunning episodes. It's just so good. I can't wait to go over next week's episode with you. But then as for episode 6 and the show overall, there's an overarching story about Joel and Ellie, father and daughter. And you don't really see that story until you've seen all 9 episodes, and then you can really take a step back and look at the whole thing like a work of art. And it is a work of art. Congratulations to Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. Some of you said, hey, give Druckmann credit where credit is due. So I am doing that. Then, without spoilers, let me just say that unlike the other stories of love, Joel and Ellie, shockingly, are actually in an unhealthy relationship. I know, I'm as shocked as you, and you're starting to see it fall apart this week. Oh, on the first watch, as I just said, this made me kind of upset. And I'm still, as you can tell, a little upset about it, maybe. Because I'm Team Joel. I love Joel. Wait till you see him go all Batman. It's fantastic. But as I rewatched episode 6 for this breakdown, intellectually, I could see and respect what Mazin and Druckmann are doing. Now, obviously, fans of the game know what's going to go down. There are a couple of surprises here and there, but this is a very faithful adaptation, which many of you are delighted in. But in my breakdown today, again, I'm not going to spoil anything, even though I know it's coming up, but I have a section, as you can see, about things to put a pin in that we'll discuss when we go over the finale, episode 9, and I put a nice little bow on things because Mazin and Druckmann put a bow on things. It's so hard not to be able to tell you this, but in episode 9, when we go over it, when you see some of the payoff from very lines that seem like throwaways here, your mind will be blown. I mean, it's really incredible. It's incredible. Watching it again, I was like, oh my God. All right, so episode 6, 3-month time jump, and kudos to Bella Ramsey for actually seeming a bit older and a bit more mature in her mannerisms and everything. I was like, wow, that's really impressive. I mean, that's subtle but impressive acting. So again, I really come to appreciate Bella Ramsey's work on this show. And what a lot of bang for our buck. This episode is a little under an hour. It's like 57 minutes or so, including credits, but it's just so much story. So many times you think they're going to fade to black and the episode will end. You're like, no, not here. Oh, there's more. Oh, not here. Oh, there's more. But then it fades to black at the worst possible moment. You're like, are you freaking kidding me? What a cliffhanger. This is the episode where Joel finally finds Tommy, and we open with a flashback to episode 5. And at first I wondered about that. I was like, that's seared in all of our brains forever. You don't need to show us a flashback. But I think that it speaks, Henry there, just of course, in that just moment that they show, realizes what he's done to his own brother, and he turns the gun on himself. And it just hit me while writing out my notes for this breakdown. Not even when I was watching the episode again, but when I was doing my notes, I was like, Henry and Sam were not only an emotionally traumatic situation for Ellie, which we'll talk about again as well in this breakdown, but for Joel, who doesn't have that kind of love with his brother. And I think that seeing Henry and Sam have it underscored what he didn't have. Joel's getting reminded a lot of what he doesn't have this episode. Because come to think of it, all of Joel's relationships are not great. Tess, Tommy, And I think that starts to dawn on him this episode when he sees how Tommy, having struck off on his own away from Joel, seems to suddenly have everything. He's got a wife, a child on the way, and a home. You know the old saying, if everyone you meet is an asshole, maybe the asshole is you. That's one of my favorite things. The last place I heard that was Justified, and I thought it was so funny. It really stuck with me in particular after that. And yeah, maybe Joel has been making some unhealthy life choices, unable to process his daughter's death even decades later, because he won't discuss it. He won't even discuss it this episode. If only he discussed it. But I think he and Tommy are too quick to condemn him. I think they're being very unfair on him as well. That said, Ellie, growing up fast, but still very much a child, she pushes Joel to move past his grief for her own reasons, to benefit her. And it leads to him going ahead in a very unhealthy way. If only there had been a therapist on that commune. So we will have to do the head shrinking. All right, you ready? Now, this compound might look like an apocalyptic heaven, but I'm with Joel. I don't trust communism. I mean, they got Tommy to cut off communication with his own brother? Who does that? That's horrible. I could see why Joel was a little upset. And then they start taking Joel and Ellie's stuff without asking for the group. I mean, it all seems harmless enough, but it really gets under your skin. And I'll tell you a story of my own experience like this. So at one point, I was working in an office in an open floor plan, and share your own experiences down below if you've come across this. So I was in an open floor plan where we all sat at a series of long desks, and my spot happened to be right near a large group table where people would hang out during the day and have lunch. And to my surprise, I discovered that everyone in the office felt that desk chairs were communal property, even if a desk chair was at a certain desk and was meant, to be the one you were working in all day, and you even had your coat on it. So it got to the point where I couldn't even go to the ladies' room without being worried that for the few minutes that I was away, I would come back to someone sitting in my chair, even though not only did I have my coat on it, but I was in the middle of working. And that actually happened. That's how I discovered this. I came back and I was like, what am I supposed to just stand here and wait for you to finish your lunch? And I believe the person expected me to go find another chair. It was just so bizarre. But yeah, and that's like just in an office. That's not even like living there for an apocalypse. So I'm just telling you, it might seem great, but I mean, also, an apocalypse, I guess, is the best option. But I think it's important for people to have their own things, their own space, to give them a sense of self and a sense of security. I think that Joel and Ellie would go nuts living there. They were not even doing well the short time they were there. I love that I think Joel also didn't want to say goodbye, but he's like, I'm going to steal a horse just because I don't want to ask you for it. I'm taking it. So anyway, it was awfully cold of Tommy not to invite Joel to join him in safety. He knew what it was like out there. I mean, he could have even gotten Joel out to Wyoming under false pretenses. He didn't have to say, I found Utopia, come on out here. He could have been like, I'm in trouble, Joel, get here right away. Meet me at this place, these coordinates far away from the commune. And then if it seems okay, I'll take you, and be like, surprise, forgive me for the false pretenses, but you can see it was worth it. I mean, Tommy just left Joel to die. That's so bad. And I think Tommy and Maria, and I think maybe it's Maria who got Tommy to think this way, they're giving Tommy an out for his own behavior by saying, oh, well, you were just following Joel. What? You were just following orders, that old thing. I mean, come on, Tommy, let's be real. And I think Tommy to some degree realizes that, which is why Joel is able to guilt him in later to maybe taking Ellie. So by the way, speaking of Maria, isn't it great to see Rutina Wesley again? True Blood fans? I always liked her. She's great. She was great on that show. So I think it's unfair, though, to judge Joel for doing what had to be done, particularly in the early days of the apocalypse. I mean, look at the very memorial in Tommy and Maria's home. Sarah and Maria's 3-year-old son, Kevin, just 3, wow. Both died the year of the outbreak, just 2 days apart, which just goes to show you how tough it was those early days. And there was no commune at that time. I mean, they had to survive long enough for a commune to be built. I'm sure a lot of people at that commune did some stuff they regret. And I think, they leave around weird dead bodies, which Ellie calls them on, and they're like, well, having a bad reputation doesn't mean you're bad. Well, then why can't we use that excuse for Joel? So Joel needs a lawyer. Are there any lawyers in this commune? Thank you very much. All right, so not all families are great, as you can see, which is maybe why Sarah meant so much to Joel. Because, when Joel was going over his backstory with Tommy even before the apocalypse, they didn't have a great relationship. They had their ups and downs even then. But Sarah wasn't just his daughter, but the only person who truly loved him unconditionally, clearly unlike Tommy. Tommy had his own stuff that he had to do, right? A joiner. Tommy was a joiner, who we see here can be easily swayed back and forth. Because once Joel tells Tommy that Ellie is immune and not to tell anyone, even Maria, Tommy goes right back to Team Joel and freezes out his wife rather than, I don't know, being an adult and making decisions for himself and telling Maria privately. I mean, I can't believe he didn't tell Maria. I mean, I don't think that's going to haunt their marriage. Tommy, he's just a foot soldier through and through. And that's very interesting. You know, it's really interesting when you're looking at other people, not just characters, but people in real life. Not everyone thinks the same. And so that's an important thing to remember. Don't assume everyone thinks like you. And so I guess Maria should just accept that Tommy's a foot soldier, which I guess is part of what makes their relationship work, because she's very much a type A personality. And you'll note that The Last of Us makes it clear that Joel is a leader, and so is Ellie. You can see from how she handles herself at the restaurant, more on that in a moment, and she says that maybe she'll inspire all the other children at the commune to be less docile and take matters into their own hands. A leader already, good for her. So a restaurant and a bar. And as Joel says, this place does seem to have it all with Christmas trees and bacon. I love that definition of having it all. Although, let me tell you, they don't have a very good judgment on what to play for family movie night. Because The Goodbye Girl, while it's a very famous Oscar-winning movie, it's not really appropriate for all the children who are watching it. I mean, it's not like an inappropriate film, but it's certainly not made for all ages. And I think that most children would not be watching. I think they would get up and leave, quite frankly, like Ellie does. It's like not a movie for kids. But I think it was chosen for intellectual reasons, because it's another father figure, Richard Dreyfuss, to a precocious special child. And this is a pattern, particularly these days. A lot of people feel this builds off of 1970s, I don't think The Goodbye Girl does, but the 1970s Japanese manga, Lone Wolf and Cub. But think about it. You not only have Mando and Grogu, right? But Stranger Things has Eleven and Hopper. Jurassic World has Owen, Grady, and Maisie Lockwood, right? That's incredible. And of course, Joel and Ellie. But their relationship is the only one that's unhealthy. So why am I saying their relationship is unhealthy? Well, again, without spoilers, let me explain how it's starting to unravel. And once you see all 9 episodes, you'll really start to see this. I think that the rest of this season is going to have to be a leap of faith with you, with the exception of episode 7. It's not going to come into clear how good it is until you've seen the whole thing. So just keep that in mind. Don't be like, oh, these episodes are dipping a little bit in quality. They're playing the long game now. So let's remember what Bill said early. Again, great writing. Bill said to Frank, I was never afraid before you showed up. And sure enough, not only is Joel starting to lose his edge because of all the loss that he's suffering, he tells Tommy, all I do is fail. All I ever do is fail. But, you know, and also, you know, he feels like he's getting older and stuff like that. And he's losing the hearing in one ear. But also he cares about Ellie. Suddenly, you know, he's worried about how much he cares about her. And, you know, he feels it's making him soft. Again, that he's losing his edge. But, you know, he's not processing any of this. He won't talk about Tess. He shuts down conversation about Sarah yet again when she's brought up here by Ellie. And for a moment at the beginning of the episode, he even thinks he's lost Tommy too, which is when we see him have his first panic attack. Because, you know, again, this is just really, you know, he's just reached the limit of how much loss he can take. And then even though he finally does find Tommy, he discovers that in a lot of ways he has lost him. He has lost Tommy. Or, you know, because like, just think, Tommy's life right now is founded on a total rejection of Joel and what Tommy feels and tells Joel that Joel represents. He's like, you see how great my life is? It's because I'm the anti-you. And Joel's like, what, man? I can't take it. And to make matters worse, Tommy now has everything, as I said, that Joel lost: a companion, a child on the way, and a home. And siblings often compare themselves to each other because they feel, hey, we started out at basically the same place, and we've basically got the same tools to work with. So why is Tommy, who Joel has felt his whole life he had to take care of, suddenly doing so much better, right? It's because he joined, you know, Maria, it seems, is a good person to follow. But, you know, again, not everything here, I'm sure, is perfect either. And it's totally different circumstances. It's very unfair to put this all on Joel. Joel can only bring Tommy back to his side by opening up to him, basically doing what Tess did to him, to Joel, making it his dying wish that Tommy takes Ellie the rest of the way. Because Joel, again, after so much loss, is convinced that he says, all I ever do is fail, so I'm sure I'm going to fail Ellie. Ellie overhears this because she couldn't stand the movie, and when Joel comes to say goodbye, she confronts him, telling Joel that she's not his daughter and that everyone she's ever known has died or left her except him until now. And I think this is a fundamental disconnect between the two of them. Again, it took watching all the episodes and then doubling back to get this. I think Ellie does not see Joel as a father figure, but as a friend. Think about it. She's always trying to act like a grown-up, wanting a drink of the whiskey, right, or whatever they were drinking. Joel is more of a mentor to her, and she believes that someday soon, she could become his equal. And that's a very different relationship than a father-daughter relationship. Meanwhile, though, Joel has always kept her at an arm's distance because she does remind him of his daughter. And Sarah, her death haunting him more than ever when he gets to the commune. After he fights with Ellie during the night and he can't stop thinking about Sarah, he decides to let Ellie in, to try and make a life for himself after all. Maybe he feels this is a shortcut to catch up to Tommy. He's like, oh, I know how I can immediately get what I lost. Take in Ellie, right? But he doesn't realize that he's not treating Ellie like a surrogate daughter. He's clearly using her as a replacement for Sarah and transferring all his bottled up emotions for decades onto Ellie. And that's a really bad idea. I'll say it again, but I have further in my notes. He's opening the floodgates. And that's not good. There's no control when you open the floodgates. So I think the healthier thing to do would have been to tell the compound about Ellie. I think they could have handled it. I mean, go have her stand off in a corner and show her arm and be like, look, everybody, come on, she's fine. And the dog said she was fine. I hope they don't get the dog in trouble. And let an entire platoon, that just goes to show you that dog's not a failsafe. But anyway, let an entire platoon or whatever, like the ones that confronted them at first, and he could be a part of that group, go and take her to the Fireflies. And so why does it have to be just the two of them? Because, Tommy said some of them sometimes make that trip as it is. And Joel should have decided if he wanted to have a life, he should have focused on Tommy and the family Tommy is creating, although Tommy's not that reliable. But, that seemed like an okay place, especially in the apocalypse. Maybe Joel could have met somebody else there, and he could have found somebody and he could have started a family. Instead, so you can see that once they leave the compound, so Joel let Ellie decide if Tommy or he takes her. But again, she's still a child. And Joel, it's actually a really irresponsible thing to do. Joel knows she's going to pick him, but by making her make the decision, I think he feels that it frees him from some of the responsibility for it. To see this change in Joel, it's like a switch being flipped because again, I think his emotions are just out of control. And before he was all about keeping his emotions in check. So it's really jarring, but I think once you see it a second time, like I did, you start to understand where this is coming from. Because otherwise, it just seems like he's acting all squirrely. You're like, what's going on with you, Joel? And I'm surprised that Ellie can't see it, but I think she's just so grateful that, he's being kinder to her and that he didn't abandon her, that she just overlooks it. So you see that Joel has totally let his guard down and is jumping too fast into father-daughter territory. And again, Ellie doesn't even feel that way. And it's a floodgate that is opened, and it's just so much pent-up love that I think it's dangerous. And of course, they find themselves in physical danger as well. And here we have ourselves an incredible callback right in this very episode. So Joel confesses to Tommy that because he's losing his edge, and from not just emotional reasons, but physical as well, like losing his hearing a bit, that kid got the jump on him in Kansas City, and Ellie had to save him. And what happens here? Sure enough, someone else gets the jump on him, and Ellie has to save him again. It's the exact same situation, again from behind. However, Joel is able to take this man out pretty quickly and pretty viciously. And it's our first clear sign of who he used to be. And I think that he goes back to being this vicious person because he has his daughter back. And it kind of gives him his edge again, because he turns back into a crazed man who's going to do whatever he can to protect his second chance. It's also a callback to when he killed that guard and beat him to death when they were sneaking out of the Boston QZ in episode 1, when again his emotions got out of check. So that's really, really interesting. And so if you don't like what I'm saying about Joel, if you also are like, whoa, get ready for the next few episodes. I didn't write this story. And again, it's only going to get worse, and it's only going to get more like Joel's just going to lose it even more. And I don't love this journey for Joel as a fan of him, but from an analytics standpoint, it is done very well. I think they do the work, even though, again, I don't like the choices. As for Ellie, we get some vital character development with her as well this episode. Why does she push Joel so hard? I think because as soon as she sees Tommy, she's worried that Joel will abandon her, which is why she's so happy and Joel is not, to discover that Tommy is married. Great, Tommy has someone else, so can you. And then there's that great conversation about what they plan to do after the Fireflies create a cure from Ellie's blood. Put a pin in that. what they're going to do, if they could do anything. And Joel says he wants to start a sheep farm, playing into his shepherd persona. While Ellie says she wishes she could go to the moon. Like Sally Ride, a great name for an astronaut. It is a great name for an astronaut. I love it. And also, how weird to think of a scenario where going to the moon is just a distant memory and humanity will likely never get to the moon again. And it really underscores just how much was lost due to the apocalypse, just, how much humanity was set back. An insurmountable amount. That's crazy. I loved it when Joel also told her to dream of sheep ranches on the moon. But back to Sally Ride. I think that's showing that Ellie imagines herself a hero and is still haunted by the reality that she could not save Sam. What does she chastise Joel for? Falling asleep when he was supposed to be watching her, what is exactly what she did with Sam. Wow! These callbacks are so subtle, but when you realize, so powerful. Joel wants to save the ones that he loves, but Ellie, still younger, a dreamer, and with no one ever really in her life for very long, she imagines herself a hero in the grander sense who can save everyone. Which might be why, being the cure for the fungus is actually really appealing to her, and why she's so determined on reaching the fireflies. So Joel is doing this for redemption, and Ellie is doing it to be a hero. Isn't that great? I think that's fascinating. Again, at first glance, they seem very much like they're on the same page, but they are not. They should have talked about maybe, but neither of them wants to talk about their feelings. I don't blame them. I don't like talking about my feelings either. But you can see that it's sometimes helpful. All right, as for the things to put a pin in, Joel's map trick. You better say the same as your wife. That's a great way to handle getting the truth out of someone. I loved it. And I loved that couple at the opening. What fantastic dialogue and acting. And I love when he said, did you tell him the truth to his wife? And then he said, are you telling me the truth? Because, he doesn't totally trust his wife. I love it. They convince Joel that Tommy is likely dead, and I think that that's to underscore their bleak outlook on life. Remember, they abandoned civilization even before the outbreak. And look how close they are to a thriving community, just simply because they don't want to look and see what's out there. So that's really interesting in and of itself. And wow, Canada! There's more things to put a pin in, but just a moment. What a location Canada is! Hollywood can make fake snow, but there ain't no substitute for the real thing. Some of the shots are just so gorgeous and truly capture the beauty of nature that perseveres, especially when left alone by man. Again, remember, the fungus is a part of nature, so it's almost, again, like the poison ivy connection, Mother Earth, taking things back. And here in the wilderness is where people are truly surviving and thriving. That's also very interesting. I'm sure some people who are wilderness fans love that idea, and that civilization is where things went to heck. When do they get in trouble again? When they go back to civilization. As a fan of civilization, I'm not crazy about it, but it is beautiful. These locations are just stunning. But again, also with the jinxing, laughing and smiling, you're not at the finish line just yet. They're doing the equivalent of, I can't wait to retire. Wow, I did like hearing that Joel secretly wanted to be a singer, although how do we not get to hear him sing? Another thing to put a pin in is the damn conversation. And that's all I'm going to say because I don't want to spoil it. But wow, that is such a subtle foreshadowing. And it's so incredible that when you realize the callback that becomes, it will blow your mind. And we'll talk about it in episode 9. Finally, I really liked how the Commune went right back to the older days of humanity and what has worked for centuries. And of course, the Wild West, which this is indicative of because it's the same region. But we're talking a genuine fort. I'm like, wow, that's a fort. But you even see that with stuff like the Middle Ages, right? But then also patrol on horses, which I guess is also from the Middle Ages, but then unique to Americana to some degree, a main street. So that was really nice. Although apparently, of all the choices we've seen, this is clearly the best, but I don't think it's perfect. Also, the monkeys at the university were a very nice touch, not only reminding us of our origins, the real back to basics, but of course a nod to the classic apocalyptic sci-fi film, Planet of the Apes. So that's my breakdown of episode 6. What do you think of this turning point for Joel? How do you feel about it? No spoilers if you've played the game, please. And get ready for another amazing episode next week with Ellie and Riley. This is right up there with Bill and Frank and Henry and Sam. It's incredible. All right, so share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.